This is WYMT Mountain News at 5:30.
Good evening, I'm Steve Hensley. Governor Andy Beshear just wrapped up his daily coronavirus briefing less than 30 minutes ago. The governor announced 265 new cases today and 8 new deaths. One of today's deaths was a 9-month-old girl in Hopkins County. That brings the totals in the state to 10,410 cases and 450 deaths. So far, 3,283 Kentuckians have recovered from the virus, and nearly 260,000 tests have been administered. For more information on COVID-19 in Eastern Kentucky, you can go to our website, WYMT.com. More parts of the country are cautiously opening up today as the number of COVID-19 cases are on the rise in about half of the states. More than 106,000 people have now died from the virus, and health officials are warning of a new COVID concern for protesters who are targeted with tear gas. CBS's Tom Hansen reports from New York City, the coronavirus epicenter.
In downtown Chicago, salons, hotels, and outdoor restaurants now have a green light to welcome back customers. Florida has been working to reopen its economy, even as the Sunshine State posted its biggest daily gain of coronavirus cases in 6 weeks. Dr. Anthony Fauci expects the U.S. will have a couple 100 million doses of a COVID-19 vaccine by early next year, but he warns that vaccine will likely be limited in how long it can protect people.
When you look at the history of coronaviruses, the reports in the literature are that the durability of immunity that's protective ranges from 3 to 6 months to almost always less than a year. That's not a lot of durability of protection.
Health experts remain concerned that protests over the death of George Floyd, like the ones that we've seen here in New York City, can become breeding grounds for the coronavirus to spread. Oklahoma State linebacker Amen Ogbongbemiga tweeted Tuesday night he's tested positive for COVID after attending a protest in Tulsa. And Tampa's police chief says as many as 5 of his officers were exposed to an infected protester earlier this week. Health experts are also concerned about the effects of tear gas that law enforcement authorities are using to disperse crowds. Tear gas can incite coughing, and the CDC warns it can cause breathing problems such as asthma.
We are really trying to work with each of the mayors to expand testing availability over the next week or two so that the individuals who are involved in the peaceful protest can get tested.
The protests have also shut down some testing sites in Florida, California, and Illinois. Tom Hansen, CBS News, New York.
The Riverfront Park in Leslie County has been closed for months, not just from COVID-19 related regulations, but from constant flooding. This year alone, the park has flooded 3 times, destroying and swamping parts of the park. With a relatively small staff, cleaning has taken time at the downtown Hyden Park. Thanks to a grant, though, Hyden's mayor says the park will be back soon and better than ever.
And we're getting new park equipment also when we have the grand opening, and we're really excited about that. And we also have raised garden beds in here for the first time this year, and hopefully we'll have vegetables that we can share with the community.
She adds that the farmers will be there on the 12th and 13th and says they will practice social distancing. They are still waiting for the go-ahead to reopen the park. If you're looking for a local getaway, you might be in luck in Knott County with some new cabins at the Mind-Made Adventure Park. WYMT's Madison Pergram gives us a look at the new lodging.
Just a lot coming up here on the mountain.
If you drive up to the top of the Mind-Made Adventure Park, you will see a few new additions.
People were coming up here riding all the time, and Knott County has no overnight lodging anywhere in the county. And so we decided cabins up here would be a good bet for us.
And these 2 new cabins, just the beginning.
We have some big dreams up here. We've got 2 cabins right now. We have a grant that's supposed to come through in the next few months, and we're going to look at putting 10 more cabins up here.
Doors ready to open for those to get some rest after a day of riding the trails at the park.
We've got tons of riding to do, and you know, once you've been out on the trails all day long, you're going to want a place to crash. You don't want to have to haul a trailer too, so come stay in our cabins.
Zach Hall, director of tourism, says the cabin's set up similar to a studio apartment.
2 beds and a bathroom, a kitchenette, and concrete floors so that people can come in and, you know, you don't have to worry about taking your shoes off right there at the door. You know, we got it so we can sweep it up.
And beyond the new interior is what you can see out the windows.
It's all about a view when you come into a cabin.
A place to get away while still getting the full experience of these beautiful mountains. In Knott County, Madison Pergram, WYMT Mountain News.
The cabins are $100 a night with a 2-night minimum. If you are interested in booking the cabins, you can call the Mind-Made Park to make a reservation. Heightened security and peaceful demonstrators marked the scene in the nation's capital after the Minneapolis police-involved death of George Floyd last week. Protesters took to the streets of Washington, D.C. again, chanting the familiar saying, "No justice, no peace." As militarized police and the National Guard have poured into Washington during the past few days, President Trump doubled down on his way of dealing with the protesters, but the Secretary of Defense refused to support the president's using of the Insurrection Act.
Racism is real in America, and we must all do our very best to recognize it, to confront it, and to eradicate it.
Federal lawmakers are planning to hold hearings on police use of force later this month. Following the Defense Secretary's comments on the Insurrection Act, the White House press secretary told reporters only the president has the authority to use it. And in case you missed it earlier, there is breaking news in the death of George Floyd. All officers seen on that video are now facing charges. And so we'll have much more on that coming up later on the CBS Evening News. Now, the recent protests across the U.S. have made an impact worldwide. People around the globe are organizing marches in the wake of George Floyd's death. CBS's Ian Lee reports from London, where thousands gathered today in solidarity.
Protesters, this way, please.
Thousands turned up in London's Hyde Park, all with the same message.
No justice! No peace!
They're letting American protesters know they're not alone.
We've got your back. We support you. Keep doing it. Try and stay peaceful. Try and stay non-violent as much as possible. But listen, we see everything over here. We've got your backs. We support you 100%.
Say his name!
For many people here, images of the protests half a world away hit home.
I think that could be my brother or my uncle or like my dad, and it's just like I feel like for so long no one's really cared because it hasn't felt personal, but now it feels so personal to me.
Demonstrators here aren't just showing support for protesters in America, they're demanding racial equality in their own country, as many are around the world. From Australia to Argentina, Bethlehem to Tel Aviv, supporters poured out into the streets. In Dublin, protesters say it's not just a U.S. issue.
Racism is everywhere. Systematic racism is in every faction of this country, every faction of America, the UK, everywhere.
Demonstrators say they'll continue to turn up until all people are treated equal. Ian Lee, CBS News, London.
Today, Pope Francis broke his silence on the death of George Floyd and the worldwide protests. During a weekly prayer, he said no one can turn a blind eye to racism or exclusion. He offered a prayer for Floyd and for those who have died as a result of racism. Protests across the country have gripped the national conversation, but talking about it can be difficult for adults and especially for children. Dr. Catherine Stone says she's had parents tell her their kids came to them with questions about the protests and the police response. She says the best thing you can do is talk to them about it.
If you have a preteen and above, they can handle this information, and really they need to learn this. It is okay for our kids to feel discomfort. It's okay for our kids to feel sad, and it's okay for our kids to feel scared. This is when the true learning occurs.
Dr. Stone said this is also a chance for parents to recognize their own biases. She says she felt a little uncomfortable talking about this as a white person and coming from a place of privilege, but it was an important talk to have. Today in Frankfort, people gathered to talk about race relations in Kentucky and across the country. It's all in the hopes that open dialogue will help lead to change across the board. Krista Frost was there.
Thankfully, my kids still don't know what happened on these grounds.
But that's not the case for the rest of us Kentuckians. 2 weeks ago, while protesting outside the Capitol building, a group of people hanged Governor Beshear in effigy.
If you come into our Capitol and you attempt to discredit our governor, we're not going to stand idly by.
That's the point to this conference held outside the Capitol today, to condemn these acts which have serious racial undertones that date far back into Kentucky's history.
It's the 111th anniversary of the lynching of Mr. John Maxey. He was lynched right here in Frankfort over on our Singing Bridge.
Maxey was accused of killing a circus performer. Another black man 15 years earlier, Marshall Boston, was also accused of killing someone. Both these men were hanged by a mob of men before getting their time in court. While it was long ago, these acts continue today.
But I thought this was a crazy scene, that why was this happening in 2020? Because these are scenes that we've seen from like the Jim Crow era.
That's why these leaders continue to talk about it, to confront the issue and make real change.
3 things have got to happen: acknowledgement, acceptance, and agreement.
In Frankfort, Krista Frost, WKYT.
The push for change will continue tonight in Lexington. Protesters are expected to gather and march through downtown like we've seen the last 5 nights. Former Tennessee football coach Johnny Majors died this morning at his home. A memorial service at St. John's Cathedral will be held at a later date. Majors also coached Iowa State and Pittsburgh during his coaching career. Majors played at Tennessee, becoming an All-American and runner-up for the Heisman Trophy twice. He was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame in 1987. Majors was 85 years old. We'll be right back.